Welcome to the MIPEX User's Guide for Governments on improving policies and measuring impact. Governments often struggle to find up-to-date and comprehensive data on which to base their policies and their proposals for improvement and their projects for equality in society. You can use MIPEX as a tool in order to analyze, compare, and improve national integration policies. MIPEX covers 31 countries in order to look at how policies work out in very different contexts. North America has traditionally been cited as the continent of immigration, with Europe as a continent of emigration. But now we see several European countries that are established countries of immigration on the continent and the Nordics and the United Kingdom. But we are also seeing new countries of immigration in just the past decade in Southern Europe or Ireland, and new waves also coming to Central Europe. Therefore, MIPEX can be used, and has been, by governments across the continent as a tool for assessment. MIPEX has been recognized as such a tool by governments, by ministers, by heads of state, and by local and regional authorities in countries like the Netherlands, Portugal, the United Kingdom, Spain, Norway, Slovenia. The MIPEX can give you a quick reference guide in order to see an overall impression of your country's strengths and weaknesses. Go to the country profile, and there you can see a spider graph of the 7 policy areas that we cover. These are areas that are essential for immigrants to have opportunities to participate in society like nationals. This allows you to see overall strengths and weaknesses. As a quick reference guide, it tells you basically where policies exist and where they could exist. This allows governments to see the effects of their current approach, of their country's traditional approach, of their predecessor's approach, and to consider ideas for change. The questions in MIPEX are looking at whether all residents have the equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities they need to improve their integration outcomes in society. It highlights areas then that governments might consider for improvement, or areas of strength which could be better implemented. For example, we've seen how the Irish Equality Minister has used the MIPEX results to celebrate best practice within her own country on local voting rights and get-out-the-vote campaigns among immigrants. We've also seen how the Portuguese government uses MIPEX as a benchmark for success in their integration plans. At the international level, MIPEX can be useful for governments to share notes on what they're doing. Often in international or European settings, representatives of governments know their policies, and perhaps those of the person to the left and to the right. But to know the policies of everyone around the table, a tool like MIPEX can be very useful in order to get beyond introducing one's policies, but in order to really understand the common strengths and weaknesses of our countries of immigration. For example, the MIPEX has been fed into the work of the councils of ministers on integration in the Council of Europe and in the EU. For example, the European Commission has identified access to nationality and political participation policies as weak and in need of improvement. In order to understand how your country compares to others, you can use our data module. There you can see how your country's strengths and weaknesses in the 7 policy areas compare to your neighbors or to a selection of countries. For that, use the spider graphs and choose 2 or 3 countries for comparison. If you'd like to see how your country compares to all of Europe or North America, use the map function. If you'd like to look at a specific issue, for example, what countries have integration tests and which of those actually set conditions for immigrants to succeed, you can use the bar graph and look at the results indicator by indicator. All of this information will help you to understand your own policies and what they have in common with other countries. You can then use MIPEX in your presentations about your country in order to explain the unique challenges that you face in your own country, This has been done, we've seen, in presentations by Sweden, for example, or Norway. You can also then find inspiration for policy improvements in other countries. Go to the policies area of this website and look at the top scoring countries. Click on their country profiles and you can learn what has inspired their policies and what those policies actually look like. It can also help you then to learn lessons about what objectives they have behind their policies and what you might have to tackle further in implementation and results. On the basis of this quick reference guide, you can also organize study visits, as have been done by governments and civil society, in order to really understand how to implement such measures. Because MIPEX makes the link between European standards and national policies, you can also read up in MIPEX to understand how you can use European and international standards to improve your national policies. We find that anti-discrimination laws have greatly and consistently improved across all countries because of the strong and useful standards in this area, particularly for new countries of immigration. We find that minimum standards on family reunion and long-term residence have helped new countries of immigration to provide basic access, security, and rights, and that has made those rights more secure across Europe. Though countries can't go back on those rights and responsibilities, they don't go much further, which begs the question of how these standards can improve in the future. We also look at areas where there are not strong binding standards at the European level, but there we also see how the existing standards can inspire changes even when they're not solid standards. For example, on access to nationality or political participation, both of which are increasingly becoming parts of countries' integration policies. If you'd like to build recommendations for change based on MIPEX, look at the areas of weakness that are identified for your country and consider how they could become areas of strength. Also look at your areas of strength and consider whether they are being fully implemented so that people actually see the law in practice. In that way, MIPEX is part of the whole jigsaw puzzle of measuring how policies are effective. MIPEX shows to what extent integration objectives are translated into policies. We use the international objectives that are agreed in organizations like the European Union, where governments agree that equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities promotes integration. But governments implement these commitments at a national level, and from there they start to implement the policy. So the next step for MIPEX is, how are these policies funded? For that, you can collect evidence from your own ministries of where integration is dealt with in different funds in order to understand how much government is pouring into integration policies. You can then start to measure the implementation of those policies to make sure that the right civil servants are working on these issues to actually help people to use the opportunities that exist in law. And there are many countries which are developing performance indicators to make sure that their authorities are up to the task. You can also start to measure the outputs of your policies by capturing the application rates, the rejection rates, and the success rates. Next, you can monitor integration statistics in order to see how integration is changing in society. Unfortunately, changes in integration statistics don't say very much about the impact of policies. For that, policy evaluations are necessary to understand how a particular policy had particular effects on different groups and local communities in society. For that, government has to commission independent research in order to fully understand whether policies are responsible for changes or whether we should look at different societal factors like new immigration flows, discrimination, public perceptions, and the like. For that, researchers are useful partners. So we hope that MIPEX is a useful tool for you to assess and compare yourself with other countries, to find inspiration for positive change, and also to develop more evidence so that we can understand the effects of integration policies on people's lives.